Hello everybody, I'm going to be doing a voiceover for my stuff here. Wedge up this clay. Here I am, in the bottom left corner. Just wedging some clay right now. Yeah, every single time I'm done, I leave, after I cut it off, I leave it overnight and then I cut it off in the morning when it's dry. I put it over in a different area. So I think I like how that sort of looks. I don't know, it just looks like it's a target ready for the clay. I actually really like the way that the pot turned out yesterday, so I think we're going to try to do something similar. I like transitioning. Oh, wait, hold on. I love those transitions, yo. Center as we can before we start throwing the sometimes clay. you can center that first mound and then add the thing on top, but this time I just did it all in one, you know. Trying to use the rest of this clay from 2 days ago when I had that really bad throwing day. Gotta love the look of ceramics getting centered. Oh my gosh. I've seen a lot of people they talk about how they wish that you could just take the clay, like when it's wet, open their clay up when it's like up this tall instead of like flattening it out lower this time. But we'll see. Yeah, they open it taller, which is really weird to me. I've never really understood why, but some people dang, again with the some people. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but they have a huge mound and they just open it up, even though it's like at the top area, you know, so it's pretty interesting that they do it that way. I've been trying to edit them a little bit more so there's not as much in between time. So see how that goes. Yeah, opening the clay is like still one of the hardest things I think for me. It's usually where things get a little bit dicey, but I think that's okay with the beginning. We're gonna start with our first pull, these beginning parts, just because I don't think it's gonna affect the pot too much, but sometimes it really does, especially when you're working with harder clay. Here's that first pull. Yeah, if you center that and make the hole when it's a big mound, you don't get to do a pull like that. That's like one of the most satisfying pulls. All right, there we go. My first pulls are usually some of the best. It's at the third pull, which is kind of, I think, weird for me sometimes. I think that's me. Yesterday told me that maybe I should do a pot. When you're moving a lot of clay on the top, like we did 2 days ago, thin on that first pull, sort of can thinner on the top, and so come loose a little bit, something like that. I did not do that this time, but I tried at the beginning, but the pull right after, when I got it tall, I went wide, so I kind of screwed it up. I think this is the part where I should establish that bottom flange that we're going to see later in the video. Oh, that second pull. I love to see those. Seriously, it's so cool. Okay. I really am getting used to the chest camera, I think, too, which is I'm getting some good angles on those poles. I feel like most ceramic videos, they don't show what's happening in that right hand, or they don't show the nice angle of the profile that you can see at this angle right now.
Where it needs to be.
Nice. Look like Casper the Ghost, yo. Just have pasty legs. Starting a pole for this tall is really important, right? So I'm doing that same thing where I get the two pieces of clay and I on 2 fingers and I try to push downwards and center the clay down and then cut off all that excess. And when I do that, usually I can get a nice pole. But this is a tough pole. This was a tough pole. I always feel right when I have to lift up my elbow that I start losing control there. I was just trying to fix that, just because there was a lot of clay left over right at that one area, so I had to do a couple of poles. And when you're trying to fix something, always start under where you left off. Start under it, because if you start right at it, I don't know. Sometimes I've had some really rough outcomes when I've done that. I think it has more of a probability of where you messed up and let go. It's better to just try to pull it up and through and start at a place that's already centered. Sometimes you don't leave it perfectly centered when you let go. You can start seeing some buckling. This was too thin, right at that middle area, that sort of where it starts to become a cylinder at that top area. That was just wasn't really that great throwing it, so it got a little bit too thin there. And so I'm just trying to get that top fixed up. So I can go wide, but I ended up not
elbow here because
time.
it's going to be wiping up against the clay on the back side there.
Yeah, when I'm throwing, get some water on that elbow for the hand that's on the interior. And so you can kind of push it up against the top of the pot, and that can help out with throwing. This one, this was right about to collapse, and I lifted it from the grave. I said, not yet, yo. Back from the shadow realm. But when I went that thin there, I already knew that I was gonna have to shift what my intent was for the pot. Starting to establish that bottom flange. It's kind of sad because just now when I came back downstairs, the whole entire flange kind of ripped off, but I think I just left water at the wrong spot, and I should just try to get as much water as I can out of that area. There we go. And this is where I'm trying to get it back in, and then it was way too off center, and so it's gonna collapse here, you know. So I'm looking back, I'm like, all right, well, let's just try to guide it down. And so that's what I do. I guide it down so it creates just like a notch, and then I can start throwing that top. And then I was like, well, I'm already here, I might as well try to get the spiral curve thrown just before I start doing anything else to the pot that can sort of make that bottom a little bit weak and fully collapse inside of itself.
Straight into.
This rib really is not that good. By the way, the hole where you pinch is just not deep enough, so I feel like I can never get a good grasp on it. There we go. Yeah, and just smoothing out the bottom, because a couple pots ago I went a little bit too crazy with the rest of it. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do double spiral into itself, right? So I was like, I might as well just sit with it and then make that smooth, and then maybe do something funky on the bottom, and then maybe I can do something later on with that little flange that collapsed in. But getting some of that water out of there. Again, smoothing out some of that clay. And then I flip the rib over to its curved side for that top part. Just make that a little bit nicer. See, there's me. Well, I didn't get it, but I flipped it to get that top part. And then here I go. I just did this a little bit too thin, and I let water gather. And when it gathers, it just wants to fall apart. And since it's so thin, it's just gonna flop right off. So I was a little bit sad. Next time I'll do it a little bit thicker. It'll be good. Here I go. I'm starting to. I was just trying to pull it to compress it a little bit, because I thought it might do what it did, and I thought I was gonna save it, trying to get some of that water out with my finger, but it didn't really work out. You can really hear my neighbors a lot in the video, but I hope you guys don't mind. That's just sort of the way it is right now. Gotta love those. Gotta love those. Just trying to smooth out some of those things, and then I did this on the other pots, some of my other pots I don't think you guys have seen yet, but I'm just trying to get that almost to look like a blossom of some sort, right? Like a flower blossom. Smoothing out some of that edge. I was like, it's not sharp enough, so I was just gonna pull those in, just like that, to get nice and to a point. And so what I'll do is I'll throw something that will stick out of that little spot there. And I think it would be pretty cool. I'm pulling that flange outwards now. So I'm like, it's pretty close, but I think now that I have that whole top finished, I'm a little bit more risky with what I do with that flange. Took my wire and I was like, oh, I've done some things with this wire before and I've cut it. So I was really into cutting this flange up to make these sort of spirally, leafy tendrils. I think it turned out okay here, but yeah, I'm just trying to make these little slots where this clay can just fall. There we go. Can put them. I slowed down the video here a lot because there's a lot of action happening, and so I also think it's kind of hypnotic in some way, like this part. When I was editing, I was really fixated on this area. You can even see right there on the pot where it collapsed, it's not fully connected, and that's because there's that little there's that slurry on the surface in between the two layers, and so it doesn't fully connect. It would probably cause some cracking if it's not dried properly, but yeah. And I've been liking the twisting, like vines or like a rose prickle or something. You know, I feel like these really look like some sort of petals a lot more than some of the other parts of the ceramic. I think one of these days what I'll have to do for a series of these sort of pots is just do it slowly, right? Like wait until it sets up a little bit, like wait until those areas dry, and then so they can be like really like straight upwards instead of kind of like droopy and falling. But maybe it's cool because there's like a weight to it. I don't know yet, we'll have to see. But and I just don't like the way those look, so I'm like, you know what, maybe I can do something here and I can smooth out these things so they kind of look like they're all one. My camera just died, but the audio will still be on. Yeah, you know, I think I'll just let myself talk for the rest of this one. This is like a cool moment, I think, to just sit, be quiet, and just like watch it for a little bit. But thanks again for watching, guys. All right. It's kind of sad that this tore right here, but I feel like that's okay. We can do something with that. But this pot, it's kind of like a really sculptural in a lot of ways, and I've been liking the way that we've been doing this bottom flange. Like this looks really nice, so we'll make sure we keep doing that for these next ones. Just make this a bit more intentional.
Yeah. Alright. Thanks for watching, everyone. All the best and strong mentality.